Hello, welcome back. So now in this part, we will discuss other aspect in which we have to satisfy our beam design. So the second aspect is we have to satisfy our beam design for horizontal shear stress also. So in the previous part, I have discussed briefly what is horizontal shear stress, which is actually developed because of the complementary property of the shear stress. So this horizontal shear stress also developed because of the vertical force, which is coming on the beam. So that vertical force is basically the transverse force. So here in this diagram, you can see because of this transverse load, what happens is this beam is trying to bend. Now, when it is bending, the central axis, which is called the neutral axis. So we know that above neutral axis, this beam is trying to compress. This beam is trying to compress. And below the neutral axis, this beam is trying to stretch. As you can see, this beam is trying to stretch. So the fibers of the beam above neutral axis, they will try to slide inwardly, and fibers of the beam below the neutral axis, they will try to slide outwardly because of the tension and compression phenomena in the beam. Now, this sliding is actually happening because of the effect of horizontal shear stress. So that is the concept. That is how in this beam, the horizontal shear stress becomes uh, very effective because of this load. And that is happening because beam is composed of fibers. So, so as I said, such a vertical load results in the tendency of the upper part of the beam. Upper part means above neutral axis of beam to slide by the lower part. So lower part is trying to slide in the outward direction. Above part is or upper part is trying to slide down inwardly. So this tendency of sliding is caused because of the horizontal shear stress. So beam should be strong enough to resist this horizontal shear stress. So therefore, we first need to calculate what is the horizontal shear stress caused because of this external load, and then we have to check this actual horizontal shear stress with the permissible value of horizontal shear stress given in the table of the IS code. So first we need to understand how do we calculate actual or yes, actual horizontal shear stress. How do we calculate it? So in the second lecture I have discussed the shear stress formula. So the same shear stress formula we are going to use here to find out shear stress at any point in the beam. We can use this formula in which it is VQ upon IB. V is the shear force, Q is the moment of area, I is the moment of inertia, and B is the width of beam. So for example, if we have the uh, rectangular beam having B as the width and D as the depth, and neutral axis is passing through the center of beam. So in this case, H is the horizontal shear stress. So H is the value which we have to calculate using this formula. V is the vertical end reactions. So if we have this beam, and if it is subjected to vertical load, so the reaction developed because of this vertical force are the end reaction. They are known as the end reaction. So V is basically the end reaction, or we can say shear force. This is basically the shear force. And Q is the moment of area above or below the neutral axis. So we know that horizontal shear stress will be maximum at neutral axis. So therefore, we have to find out horizontal shear stress at neutral axis level. So to find out the value of Q, then generally Q is the moment of area above the point where we have to find out moment of inertia. So if we want to find out shear stress at neutral axis, then the Q value will be area of this part multiplied by the distance between neutral axis and the CG of this area, this shaded area. So CG of this shaded area will be here, and this distance will be d by 4. So this ultimately Q value for our rectangular section will be B into d by 2 into d by 4. So this ultimately we get as BD square by 8. So that will be the Q value in case of rectangular beam. And I is the moment of inertia. So moment of inertia about the neutral axis will be BD cube by 12. So this will be BD cube by 12, and B is the width of beam. So if we put the value of Q here in this formula, and if we put the value of I in this formula, then the value can be modified. So ultimately here, first we need to learn how do we find out this V value. So IS code has suggested how to find out V value for if we have the UDL or if we have the concentrated load, then how do we find out this V value? That the formula is given in the IS code. So here first we will discuss if the beam is subjected to a UDL. In that case, the V will be calculated by using the formula, this one. In this, W is the total load coming on the beam, and D is the depth of beam, L is the effective span of the beam. And this W is basically the capital W. So total load, for example, if this beam is subjected to a UDL, for example, this is the UDL, and the intensity of UDL is small w into kilonewton per meter. And if this is the effective span, then this capital W will be the total load, and total load will be load per meter length multiplied by total length. So that becomes small w into L. So this is how we calculate the total load, this capital W, and D is the depth, L is the effective span. Similarly, if we have the concentrated load, for example, say this is the beam subjected to a concentrated load, and in this case V will be calculated by this relation. So both of these formulas are given in the IS code. I will be showing you this formula in the IS code later. So here in this case, C is the load. So we can say that C is the concentrated load having some magnitude. L is the effective span. And X is the distance from the support or reaction point to the load. So distance between the load, line of action of load, and the reaction or at the support, this will be known as X. So this load can be anywhere. It may be here also. So distance in that case will be distance from the load to the center of the support. So this is how we calculate the X value and C value. So W is the WL, small w is the intensity of UDL, D is the depth, C is the concentrated load, and X is the distance in mm from reaction to the load. So reaction will develop at the center of support. So distance between reaction and the point load will be X value. Now, so till now we have discussed how do we find out horizontal shear stress. Now we want to know what is the condition for our beam to be safe in horizontal shear stress criteria. So as per condition, it says for beam to be safe in horizontal shear stress, it will be H. So H should be less than or equals to safe permissible stress in horizontal shear. So H will be calculated by the formula, shear formula, and this safe permissible stress will be found from the table. So we can refer table to get this permissible stress value, and we will calculate this actual stress and we will compare it. So if our actual stress is less than safe permissible stress, then we say that our beam is safe in the shear criteria. And if it is not satisfying the condition, then we say that our beam is not safe and we have to revise the design of our beam. So that is the condition for horizontal shear stress. Now uh, we will move to the next criteria in which we have to satisfy our beam, and that criteria is bearing stress. Now, what is this criteria that we will try to understand here in detail? So basically, say for example, if this is the beam and say this is the supports. So say for example, if it is subjected to this UDL, and this UDL is basically downward load, and because of this UDL, reaction is generating at the support. So at the point where reaction is generating, so this reaction can be treated as a concentrated load. And this concentrated load, what this load is doing is, it is trying to compress, fibers of the wood. So this compression should not occur, otherwise our beam will fail from the ends. So therefore, uh, for this condition, what is required here is sufficient bearing area on which the beam is resting should be there. Now bearing area is what you can see in this diagram. For example, this is our beam and it is resting on the support. So width of support is actually known as length of bearing, and this is the width of beam. This is the depth of beam. So generally B is fixed. The length, the other length which we can change is the length of bearing or length of the width of support. So basically I'm talking about this value. This is actually called the length of bearing, and the area on which beam is resting. So this is the area which is basically the hedged part. So this hedged part is basically called the bearing area. So these fibers will compress if this area is not sufficient. Then these fiber will try to compress. So to avoid this, what we do is we provide sufficient bearing area, and this sufficient bearing area can be provided when we provide sufficient length of bearing. Because B is fixed, B cannot be changed. Here in this case, we can change length of bearing. So sufficient length of bearing is to be provided. Now, here, as I said, the area of bearing on such supports must be large enough to transfer the load without damage to the wood fiber. So that is what I have said, that this area should be sufficient so that wood fiber are not affected. Now, first we will discuss about the length of bearing as per IS code recommendations. Now, the permissible bearing stress which is given in the table, it is given for the length of bearing which is 150 mm. So minimum length of bearing, if it is 150 mm, then we can check bearing stress with the, permissible bearing stress with the uh, actual bearing stress. And permissible bearing stress is represented here by FCN. So this FCN value can be calculated from the table. So, and this FCN value is given for 150 mm length of bearing. Now, what if our length of bearing is less than 150? What we do in that case? So it says that minimum length of bearing is 75 mm, which means we cannot have length of bearing less than 75 mm. So permissible stress is given for the bearing length of 150. Now, if we have length of bearing less than 150, then how do we compare them with FCN, which is actually for 150 mm? So in that case, IS code has recommended some modification factor, and based on those modification factor, we will see here. So here, as I said, generally the length of bearing is about 100 to 150 mm. And if we have length of bearing less than 150, then in that case, we have two factors. So it says for bearing less than 150 mm, permissible compressive stress perpendicular to grain is multiplied by modification factor K7 given in IS code. And those K7 factor are 1.1 and 1.2 for the bearing length 100 mm and 75 mm respectively. So if our bearing length is 100 mm, then we will multiply the actual bearing stress with 1.1. Similarly, if our length of bearing is 75 mm, we will multiply that with 1.2. So that is the factor given in the IS code. Now we will see what is the steps to check the bearing stress. So first step is, first we will find out the end reactions. And reactions in the beam are basically the reactions which is generated at the support. So first we will find out the support reaction, and after that we will find out the bearing area required. So this, you can see this formula is actually similar to the formula of stress. Stress is force upon area. Now here if we consider area as the bearing area, F as the end reaction, and stress as the permissible bearing stress, which we can find out from the table, which is FCN. So here you can see stress is basically the permissible stress, F is the end reaction, A is the bearing area required. So what is the area required for bearing? So we can find out that with this formula. And what is the area of bearing provided? So as you can see in the previous slide, the area on which beam was resting, it was hatched like this, and this was the length of bearing, and this was the width of beam. So B multiplied by length of bearing is the bearing area provided. Width of beam multiplied by length of bearing assumed. So for our beam to be safe in bearing criteria, the area we have provided should be higher than the required. If it is higher than required, then we will say that our beam is safe in bearing stress condition. So that is the case for bearing stress. So here also I have written, for beam to be safe in bearing stress, the bearing area provided should be more than bearing area required. Otherwise, what we have to do is we have to revise the length of bearing by using the relation. Again, we have just rearranged the equation, and rearranged equation is bearing length required multiply is equals to end reaction upon width of beam multiplied by permissible perpendicular stress in compression. So with this, we can find out the, uh, we can satisfy the condition. Or in other words, we can say that bearing stress should be, actual bearing stress should be less than or equals to permissible bearing stress, which is FCN. So actual bearing stress should be less than FCN. And how do we find out actual bearing stress? Actual bearing stress can be calculated as end reaction divided by area of bearing provided. So that can also be adopted here. So this is only the rearrangement of the terms. So either we compare with the bearing area or we compare with the bearing stress. In both cases, we can say, if the condition is satisfied, we can say that our beam is safe in this criteria. Now, the next criteria in which we have to satisfy our condition, satisfy our beam design is design for deflection, which means the deflection in the beam should be within the permissible limit. Now, but before this, we will try to understand what is deflection. Deflection is caused due to the vertical load. So in this case, you can see if this is the beam resting on the support, because of this vertical load, the beam will bend from its original position. So the displacement from its original position, this one, is known as deflection. So this deflection should be within permissible limit. So IS code has given some permissible limits for the deflection, and Now, why this deflection should be within limit? There are various reasons, and in those various reasons, one of the important reason is to control vibration. If vibration is high, I mean, if deflection is high, there will be high vibration, and the life of the beam will be less in that case. So therefore, there should be a limit, permissible limit for the deflection. So deflection generally we represent by delta, and permissible limit for the deflection is given in the IS code. So generally we represent permissible deflection with delta P, and it says generally deflection in case of all beams supporting brittle material like gypsum, ceiling, slates, tiles, asbestos, sheets, uh, the permissible deflection should not exceed 1/360th times of the span, which means 1/360th times of L. So sigma, I mean delta P value is basically in this case is 1/360 times of L. So that is the limit of uh, deflection given by the IS code. Now this is the permissible limit. Now if our beam is subjected to vertical load, we have to find out what is the actual deflection. What is the actual deflection, so that we can compare this actual deflection with the permissible limit. So if our actual deflection is less than permissible limit, we say that our beam is safe in deflection criteria. So therefore, we need to understand how do we find out this actual deflection in beam. But before that, we will see here this 1/360 limit is when beam is supporting brittle material. Now, if beam is not supporting brittle material, in that case, what is the permissible limit? So IS code has further suggested the deflection in the case of other flexural member. Flexural members are basically the beams. It says the deflection in case of other flexural members shall not exceed 1/240. So in case of normal beams supporting normal load, so it will be 1/240 times of L. So that will be the permissible limit of deflection for normal beams supporting normal dead load and live load. But if it is supporting brittle material like the gypsum ceilings, where if deflection is high, they may crack or they may break. So to avoid that, we have less limit of permissible deflection. But if it is supporting normal load, for that it is 140 times of 1/40 times of L. So now here in the next slide, we will try to understand how do we find out actual deflection. Well, actual deflection is represented by the notation delta A. So delta A can be calculated by this relation. So this is the relation with which we can calculate delta A. In this, it is K into W into L cube by EI. Now, in this, we will try to understand each terms one by one. So in this, W is the total load on the beam. But here it is suggested, how do we find out this W? It says, for calculating the actual deflection in case of beams, the loads taken should be twice the dead load plus 3/4 of live load and multiplied with the effective span. So according to this statement, the value of W in this case is calculated as twice of dead load and three-fourth of live load multiplied by the effective span. So this is how we calculate W in this case to calculate the actual deflection. Then L is the effective span of beam. E is the modulus of elasticity. I is the moment of inertia. Now, what is K? K is a factor which depends on the type of beam and type of load it is supporting. So K is basically a constant which depends upon the type of support and type of loading on the beam, and therefore we have some of the value. So if we have cantilever beam, say for example, if we have cantilever beam supporting point load at free end, so deflection will be something like this. So in this case, K value will be 1/3. Similarly, if we have cantilever beam with UDL, if we have cantilever beam with UDL, So in this case, K value will be 1 by 8. Then if we have simply supported beam, supporting point load, central point load. So in that case, K value will be 1 by 48. If we have beam, simply supported beam supporting the UDL, say this is the common case which we generally encounter. If we have beam supporting UDL over the whole span, in that case, the value of K will be 5 by 384. So these are some of the common case for which this K value is given. So if we are able to calculate all terms, we can easily calculate delta A. And once we calculate delta A, we will compare it with delta P. And for our beam to be safe in deflection, delta A, which is the actual deflection, it should be less than or equals to permissible deflection. So that is the condition for passing our beam in deflection criteria. So now in next part, we will solve a design problem to design the beam. Thank you.